Hey everyone, this is Jack Bourne, and I'm here with Chandler Bolt, and it's great to have you here, Chandler. I'm excited to be talking with you today. For those of you who are not aware, Chandler is the founder of Self Publishing School, and he's also the author of over six best-selling books. And some of his background, which I'm sure he's going to go over in just a little bit, he actually dropped out of college, and within 2 years, he was a best-selling author many times over, and also had a seven-figure business. One of his books is called Book Launch: How to Write, Market, and Publish Your First Bestseller in 3 months or less, and use it to start and grow a six-figure business. So I know this conversation is going to be extremely interesting and applicable to almost everyone who's a Deadline Funnel client. So I'm excited to dive into this. So Chandler, great to have you here.
Yeah. Hey, Jack, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this.
So why don't you give us a little bit more in-depth detail into Self-Publishing School, who you serve, and how you help them grow their business?
Totally. So Self-Publishing School, it's an online training program. We teach people to write, market, and publish their first book in 90 days. So our ideal people are people who want to use a book to grow their income, their authority, or their business. So we teach both nonfiction and fiction side of things, but especially on the nonfiction side. That's kind of our sweet spot.
Right.
So that's that's kind of the setup. That's what we've been building out and really just scaling, obviously with the help of Deadline Funnel a ton, and that's allowed us to take what our industry is mostly launch based, and that's allowed us to even out revenue. Which for those of you who are business owners who you go through like the highs and lows, whether it's seasonality, whether it's launches, whether it's promotions or whatever else, that it can be pretty stressful and just hard to scale a business, right? If you don't have that leveled out revenue. So that's kind of that's been our experiences. Is that's really helped us to scale it, which ultimately helps make sure that we're helping more people. We're getting more books published. Like people's books are getting published every single week because the program's evergreen and because we can continue to drive people there.
That's awesome. So why don't you take us through a little bit about what your annual calendar is like? You don't have to get too far into the weeds, but do you still do some actual launches during the year? Do you kind of mix and match evergreen and launches, or do you just do full evergreen now?
We mix and match evergreens and launches. We do two big launches. We'll do one either in January and February,
Right.
and we'll do that, and we'll do like July, August usually. It just kind of fluctuates. So 2 times a year, spread out about 6 months. We evergreen the rest of the time. We spend a decent amount of money on paid traffic, and we're also focusing on SEO content-based stuff, so to just continue to drive leads that way. So that's our overall promotional calendar. We have done summits in the past in the summer, and those have worked pretty well. We were not going to do that this year, but we have done that in the past. So that's kind of our regular calendar. But I'm really focused on building scalable paid customer acquisition campaigns and funnels, because that's I think if you're not doing that, then you're obviously going to hit a plateau with your revenue. Where I've been frustrated in the past with my business is like not growing as fast as I want it to. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. Even though we're doubling revenue year over year, right? So we started in February 2015. We went from 0 to 1.32 million by the end of that year. We did a little over 2.2 last year. We'll do at least 5 this year. So we still have a good trajectory and good growth. But that's been made possible by just the evergreen side of things. Because if you were to look at our P&L before that, it was like, wow, incredible month. Negative, negative, negative. Wow, incredible month, right? So that's what's been really helpful.
What were some of the keys that helped you start off with such an amazing year and then grow from there? Like what were some of the big things that you did really well?
Yeah, our biggest strength probably is strategic partnerships. So that I think that's obviously like affiliates and things like that. That's what really helped us making relationships with people who they're bloggers, they're podcasters, they're influencers, and they have big audiences. And then also just treating that doing that really well, making sure that they're treated well, and always thinking about it like, why would they want to do this, and how can I make this a huge win for them? I think that's where everybody screws it up. It's like, how can I get as much money as possible with as little work as possible and leech onto these other guys' audiences? Like, that's how people look at it. And it's like, I don't know. For me personally, like, I would rather build real friendships and real relationships with people. And then it's like, cool, if this works, great. If not, like, I'm not going to bug the crap out of you for months to like promote my thing, right? And I'm never leading with that. So that just as a byproduct of that, we became really good at strategic partnerships. So that helped. And then that gives you enough traffic to really test and refine what you're doing, I think, because then, the launches would cover up the negative profitability that we were experiencing on our paid traffic long enough for us to get the hang of it, right? Because they were so lucrative that we could just bankroll that and just dump that back into paid traffic and lose money, or as Perry Marshall says, you're paying for an education, right? In those beginning times. And so we were paying for an education there. And then that's helped us to where now we're starting to get traction, where we'll spend, we're slowly scaling, but we're about 700 something bucks a day on paid on Facebook traffic. So, and that's profitable. And so we're continuing to scale that.
So when you went from losing money on paid traffic to figuring it out, were there some big wins that you figured out, or was it a lot of small improvements that added up?
A lot of small improvements and a lot of just banging. You don't want to bang your head against the keyboard, right? It's just like, bam, bam, this is still not working. But then one big thing that changed for us is we started doing more evergreen webinars. As opposed to we were doing video series. So like we were trying to make our launches evergreen, which Deadline Funnel is great for that, right? Like we had the fanciest funnel ever. It's like all behavioral based, and like they would get to the cart in as little as 5 days or as much as 2.5 weeks, depending on if and when they watched the launch videos. So if they watched the launch videos, we'd say, hey, thank you for doing that. Here's the next video. Like if they didn't, we'd say, hey, I saw you didn't watch the video, and so it was all this complicated stuff. They drop on the sales page. There's a dedicated deadline funnel timer for them, all those things. And then we close, it's like this massive funnel. And it's just way too complicated. And we were trying to replicate the launch, but on an evergreen basis. And we were driving enough traffic to do it and to have the social proof around the launch, like the comments under the videos and all that. Like that wasn't an issue. I think it was just a flawed funnel and potentially a flawed offer to paid traffic. But what really changed is when we went singular with the offer and when we went evergreen webinar, like we just started running with that. And that's worked a lot differently. We're also doing a free plus shipping book funnel. That's working decently well. But we really need to, what our goal is to start just getting better, at that, like rolling out different funnels, because we just stuck to that one funnel and we were trying to optimize this one funnel. So that would be my biggest takeaway and piece of advice for people is like, just try a bunch of stuff. And for us, the reason we weren't trying is so much is because we built this massively complicated funnel. So now imagine building another funnel and it's like, oh, wow, this is going to take forever. As opposed to now our philosophy is more like, how fast can we spin up a funnel and start driving traffic, drive $1,000 into it, and then get baseline metrics. And then that'll decide, okay, do we need to add some sophistication or add some, extra layers like text, voicemails, direct mail, or like other things that we can add on to that? Or do we just need to cut our losses and move on from this funnel?
It's so interesting that you bring that up. I've been teaching a concept called the PPD funnel, but in teaching this funnel, I've really gone over many times to keep it as minimally viable as possible. In other words, do like the lean version of it and then add complexity on, because just like you were saying, you get results a whole lot faster. There you go. Scrum. So I love hearing you say that, because it's really easy to have these real elaborate plans and take 6 months to actually build it out before you even have the results. So
totally agree.
That's really interesting. And so now, just to recap, you say that you want to try to spin up a new funnel concept and see if it has legs. Like you might still be losing money, sure. I would imagine, but you see, hey, there's life here. This could work if we just tweak a few things. Exactly.
And Jack, I'm so glad you reiterated on that, because I think it's really important for people. Like, to be frank, I think it's just because I wanted to look cool. It's like, oh, when I could explain to somebody like you, I can be like, oh, it's behavioral based and it tracks this and it does this. It's like, none of that matters. I think it's just me thinking that like, oh, if I made this super cool and complex funnel, like it's got to convert better, and like I could brag about it to people, right? But now it's like, no, don't reinvent the wheel. Like, let's just get something simple, ugly, and throw some traffic into it.
So can you go one layer deeper into what your webinar funnel looks like now? Are they
Yep.
opting in for like a download, or what are they opting in for? Or
Yeah, this is, I mean, we're probably not doing this the way that a lot of people are doing it and with having success. And I know a lot of people like coach against this or teach against this, but we're literally just dropping straight into the webinar.
oh wow,
So there's no download or anything before it. So we're sending to the webinar. They can either do like a just in time, like in the next 15 minutes, or they can schedule for later that day. Sometimes later, like the next day or something. And so that drops them into the funnel. They watch the webinar, that sort of thing. We're running video ads. That's worked pretty well for us. That seems to get our lead cost the lowest. You can get click costs and you can get everything lower if you're just doing straight up regular ads, we found. But like, there's just I haven't been able to definitively prove it yet with data. I do have a hunch, though, I know our lead costs are lower when we do video ads, but I haven't been able to definitively like prove that even if we paid more for our leads, they would be worth more on the back end yet. I have a hunch that that's the case. But if you just imagine like you're building rapport with someone in an ad, then you go to the landing page. We find that our clicks are usually more expensive from videos, but the lead costs are almost always less. Because like when they click, it's an opt-in. Like
right?
They're like, I'm clicking here to go to this webinar, not like, oh, this picture looks kind of neat. Click,
Right.
like, and then they're on this landing page and they're like, what's going on here? I've got to like figure this out. No, I'm out. I'm already distracted, right? So it's less of that, and it's more of a qualified click, which leads to a qualified opt-in, which leads to them, I think, actually showing up to the webinar, which leads to them paying attention through the funnel, and then hopefully converting on the back end.
Is your offer on the webinar similar to what you were offering in your more complicated funnel?
It is. It's similar but more simple. So in our more complicated funnel, it's what we normally do for our launches, which is we say, hey, we have $1,000 version of the program and we have a $2,000 version of the program. You choose which one you want. And if you want payment plans, and on the webinar, it's just the $1,000 price point. That's it. So it's just like, hey, I've got this thing for you. Here's what it is. You can buy it. And if you want to buy it, you can either pay full price or you can pay the payment plans. And here's the order form. Like, not like
Real
here's a sales page where you can click which one you want and then get confused and not buy and then worry about your decision. And then, all that stuff is just straightforward.
Gotcha. And then just a little bit more detail after they see the webinar. If let's say that someone registers, I register but I don't show. Yep. How many days are you pursuing me before a deadline kicks in?
I'm pursuing you one day before you know that there's a deadline on the offer. Right. So it's a more of a replay. Like, hey, we missed you yesterday. Here's the replay. This is available for a few days. And on that replay page, there's a deadline funnel. So that's the first time they see the deadline funnel. Then the next day, and the next day and for the next, I want to say 3, maybe 4 days. I think it's 5 days all told post webinar. So I think I want to say it's 4 more days. Maybe it's 3, but it's 3 or 4. And then we follow up via the sales page, and that same deadline funnel timer is on those sales pages. And so that's that. And then so we also do some other things, like we'll send a text message during that time from our support person. We'll send a voicemail from me. So we basically, the next day we say, hey, they get a voicemail from me. This like, hey, this is Chandler. I saw that you just checked out my webinar yesterday. Wanted to say thank you. I hope you learned a lot. Wanted to let you know that if you stayed till the end, you saw this. If you didn't, here's the download. Like, discounted price on this program for the next few days only. Give us a call at this number. We can answer any questions you have. Yada yada yada. Right. So then they can call in and talk to someone on my staff that's like doing phone sales. So that helps. And then they have the deadline funnel kick in. Then we do a 1-day cart reopen afterwards. So we wait for a day and then do a 1-day reopen and say, hey, it's the classic grind dice. Like, although I can't make it any cheaper, I can break it up for you. Right. So like, although I can't discount the price any further, I can break up the payments. And a lot of you said that you need some help on that. So here's a 6-pay. So it's the first time that we offer a 6-pay. It's 1 day only, deadline, funnel timer. There we go.
Boom. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about exactly how you get people to write a book in such a short period of time, because I know people would be interested about that. So how I know you can't. Number one, I don't want you to give away the secret sauce, but there's an entire course and training behind how to do this. So there's no way we could cram that amount of information here. But like, give us some information about how it is that someone who wants to write a nonfiction book and use it to build their business, how can they do that in such a short period of time when so many people struggle for months and months and months and months and months?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for us, I think there's multiple things that we do because we have a higher success rate than any online program that I've ever seen in the book space, especially, but that I've ever seen in general. On our first cohort of students, which this was the first time we launched like a ghetto version of the program, and we had over a 60% success rate on our students within 6 months, meaning they wrote and published a book within 6 months. So that doesn't count anyone after. The sample size was decent size. We had 44 students. So basically that means that what's the math on that? I think it's over 30 of them had written and published a book within 6 months. It's like, that's pretty unheard of in an industry where, you're lucky if you get 10% of people to even open the course. Right. It's like they put it on their self-esteem, right? And then they feel good about themselves and they never go in. Yeah, the shelf help. So there's a few reasons for that. So we have a high level of accountability. We have coaching and support. Both one-on-one coaching with our certified coaches, as well as support in the community. And then we also we break it down into micro commitments. So one of the biggest frustrations I had with online courses in general, and especially with writing a book, is like, I'm kind of like a straight and narrow guy. Like, if you give me what needs to be done, I can put in the grunt work to make it happen, but sometimes I just need you to lay it out step by step, right? So for me, I was frustrated. It's like, okay, it's great that you're telling me all the things that I could do, but I want you to just tell me what I should do and in what order and like step by step, right? And so that's kind of one of the things that we do is we have a 90-day calendar, and it's like literally day by day. We tell people, hey, you'll be successful if you only spend 30 minutes to an hour a day. And a lot of people say stuff like that, but it's like, and here's exactly what you need to do every single day. So if you want to get into it and you want to do it, then you just follow this. And if you want to take 9 months, 12 months to do your book, cool, work at a slower pace. But if you want to run with a 90-day pace, like, here's what you got to do. So we really just break it down step by step. And a lot of things are things that I learned from, I work with a company called Student Painters in college. I don't know if you've ever heard of Student Painters, College Pro, College Works, all similar type companies. They teach you how to run a business by running an exterior painting company. And it's a college internship. So they have all these levels of accountability and accountability calls and all this structure, because it's like a franchise type model. And so I thought to myself, if they can teach 18, 19, 21-year-old kids how to run very successful, for me, I did 6 figures. So good sized companies that are just the kids that are just interested in partying and whatever else. And if they can train them, then this has got to work for regular people that are even slightly motivated to write a book, right? So I took a lot of the same principles and applied them to this. And so that's kind of what we teach. And I think that's why we have, really high success rate. I see.
So you break it down into really, really tiny chunks that someone can follow every single day.
Totally. And I did want to just make this clear that sometimes it's at the expense of people refunding. I think what I see a lot of times is as soon as someone sells a course, their number one priority is just to get the person not to refund. So they structure everything in a way that's how can I get this person not to refund? Now, that's certainly important, right? We're very focused on that. But for us, it's we value student success over refunds. So sometimes pressuring someone hey, you need to get your assignment done is going to make them be slightly overwhelmed to be shoot, I knew I didn't have time for this. I need a refund, right? And we get that, but we would rather have more successful students because we know that in the long run, like they're going to tell other people about the program, and it's going to be way more beneficial. So we kind of prioritize like our student success over just a short-term refund dollar amount.
So someone who purchased with the hope of buying shelf help, they may eject.
Yeah, they might eject out of the aircraft.
That's funny. So, how much success are your students having with using these books to build their business? I think it's fantastic that you have 60% success rate. That's amazing. But are your students having some pretty good success using it to grow their business too?
Oh, absolutely. It's they're having tons of success. I mean, I could go all day, whether it's a brick and mortar business or something else. Like one of our guys, David McKay, he wrote and published 2 books in 89 days. And he sent me an email the other day. It was a year to the date. He said, my books have brought in over $10,000 just from the books. And he said, but from the business from those books, it's brought in about $45,000 in business. So $45,000 in a year from when you enrolled in the program. That's pretty solid. Another guy, Dave Rogenmoser, he went from basically he did his book, brought in $3,364, I think, within the first 60 or 90 days. But then within 18 months, he leveraged that book to build an email list and a 7-figure business. So he had $1 million within 18 months of publishing his book, and he started from scratch. So there's a lot of stories like that, and that's because really we teach. I teach using your book to drive leads, and I mean I'm looking in our lead report for last month, and a lot of our top channels that aren't paid traffic, they're all the books. It's like, oh, a book that I published, 3 or 4 years ago, like brought in 30 leads last month. Like a book that, it's like these books keep bringing in leads. And what I like to say, especially for people who maybe have a brick and mortar or a service-based business. So this is my most recent book published, right? This is like kind of a big book for me. But what I like to say is like a book is a silent salesman. So when this is like, so if this was in your hands and you're reading this book, it's a silent salesman. I'm spending hours with this prospect. In this case, it'd be you. And now we have a relationship. So I'm not saying a word. The book's saying it for me. And so by the time that we were to meet, if you're like, hey, I'm interested in publishing a book, or by the time that you watch one of my videos or something, it's like we have a relationship, and there's a lot of selling has already happened, right? That's where I think it's powerful for business owners.
Now, what about beyond, say, a service-based or brick and mortar business? What about a more competitive space, like, for example, marketing? So there's a lot, just hundreds and hundreds of marketing books. Can someone still use a book and self-publish it using your methods that you teach and get traction with that?
Totally, but I would definitely recommend not to just publish a book on marketing, right? You're going to have to go way down deep, and that's how you will. Because like my very first book, it was in time management. Just like, oh yeah, never heard of any books on that. Like say getting things done, eat that frog. Like, I mean, you could go on and on and on, right? But we went down time management for entrepreneurs who control their own schedule. And that's why that book was kind of a big hit, right? So that would be my biggest piece of advice for people is it doesn't matter what market that you're in. And it can and will work for you, but you got to like figure out your sliver. Russell Brunson, his is funnels, right? So with .com secrets, I mean, we could go on and on and on, but it's like, what's your sliver within the market?
Mm-hmm. Cool. So how can people learn more about the self-publishing school? What would be a good way for them to get to know more about what you offer?
Yeah. So there's a couple resources that might be helpful. All free training. So we've got self-publishingschool.com/free. That's if you want to check out that webinar funnel that we were talking about. You can actually just go through it. Secondly, we've got a blog post. It's like kind of like it's the end all be all. So it's how to self-publish a book, and it just goes through step by step. And then lastly, what might be helpful, because this is more of a software crowd, I would imagine, maybe not, but
I would say it's more. So a lot of our clients are course creators, online course creators.
Cool. Well, then maybe this won't be applicable. I was going to say that we've got like how to choose which software to use to write your book. That's like a question that we get a lot. So that would be helpful for people. It's also a blog post.
Cool. Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, Chandler, this was great. Thank you for sharing your backstory, the market that you serve, how you help them, and also, of course, being really open and honest about how you use Deadline Funnel in your business. This has been a great conversation. Thank you.
No problem, man. Hey, Jack, I just want to thank you for Deadline Funnel because no joke, since we've used it pretty much since we started the business, and there's a lot of softwares that don't scale with companies. Like they're either way out of reach when you first start, and you're like, "Wow, I can't afford that," or like you grow, and the next thing you know, you're like, "I'm looking for the next level enterprise." But that's one thing. Like Deadline Funnels, I would almost say without a doubt the one piece of software that we've used like in all phases of growth, and I can't see us stopping anytime soon. And since doing that, we've brought in like gosh, like probably over $5 million in business since we started using Deadline Funnel. So it's just a powerful tool and something that I really believe in. I just appreciate you making it and making it so easy to use.
Awesome. Well, we really pride ourselves. Nothing makes us happier than hearing stories about how entrepreneurs like you are using it. And I was sharing that with someone the other day, and they said, just think about not just that. So if I'm helping Chandler's business, it's not just that. Chandler's helping, now can reach
Right,
more people. So in the same way, you're not just helping the author, you're, influencing all the people beyond that. So
right.
it's just really, really cool to be able to see something that you think of do great things in the world. And I know you have that feeling too. So thank you very
Totally.
much for sharing that.
No problem. Thank you, Jack.